There exists a single sentence, one string of words so disarmingly simple yet devastatingly powerful that it can seize control of any conversation anywhere with anyone. You've been in those moments where your words fall flat, where others talk over you, dismiss you, or steer the dialogue away from your intent. But imagine if, instead of fumbling for dominance, you could instantly command the room, silence the noise, and bend the discussion toward your design. That power is real, and once you learn this sentence, you'll never lose another exchange again. Most people think influence is about talking more, being louder, or proving their intelligence. They are wrong. Influence begins not with volume, but with precision. The masses ramble, explain, defend, justify, handing away their power like coins tossed in the street. You will not. Because once you discover how a single well-crafted phrase can freeze disrespect, redirect chaos, and disarm even the most cunning manipulator, you'll realize how fragile the average mind really is, and how easily you can outsmart it. But before I reveal this brutal psychological weapon, make sure you never miss what's coming next. This is Curiosity to Wisdom, where we strip away illusions and arm you with strategies to outwit anyone who dares test your power. So if you want to defend your respect, sharpen your mind, and rise above the ordinary, subscribe now and prepare yourself for the sentence that will change how you command every conversation. The average person clings to a fatal illusion. They believe control is earned by drowning others in explanations, piling on logic, or flexing charisma, as if charm alone could bend the will of another. They flood the air with words, hoping that somewhere in the torrent they will strike the right chord, hoping that convincing, impressing, or dazzling will somehow guarantee dominance. But the truth is darker and more humiliating for them. In every excess of speech, they expose their weakness. The moment they begin to justify, to explain, to chase understanding, they betray the hunger beneath their mask, the desperate need to be respected, the aching desire to be validated, the secret terror of being dismissed. And above all, they reveal their fear of silence. Silence is unbearable for the ordinary man, because silence is a mirror. It reflects back the fragility of his identity, showing him that without noise, without constant performance, he has nothing solid to stand on. But you, if you wish to command rather than beg, must reverse this instinct. Where they rush to speak, you must learn to withhold. Where they ramble in panic, you must condense into steel. Power in conversation does not come from volume, from charisma, or even from logic. It comes from precision. To dominate, you do not compete for attention. You seize it by striking directly, like a blade piercing through the noise. The single sentence you must master is not elaborate, not clever, not adorned with ornamental detail. It is stripped bare, short, sharp, framed as a directive. It does not ask permission. It does not soften itself with apology. It does not beg to be liked. It commands. This is the counterintuitive principle the masses will never grasp. Less is not weakness. Less is control. The fewer words you wield, the more weight each carries. Like gold, scarcity gives it value. And in this economy of speech, one sentence, deliberately crafted and delivered with unshakable certainty, becomes a weapon of psychological warfare. It is the dagger concealed in velvet, silent until it cuts. This is how you neutralize the talkative, silence the arrogant, and pull the entire axis of a dialogue back into your orbit, without raising your voice, without explaining, without giving them anything to hold against you. So what is this sentence? Strip away the fantasies of some universal magic phrase that works in every situation, and you will see it for what it truly is. Not a trick, but a structure, a psychological skeleton that can be adapted to any confrontation, any negotiation, any exchange of power. The form never changes, only the flesh you clothe it with. At its core, it always begins with absolute certainty. That is the essence. The average man hesitates. He qualifies his statements with maybe, I think, I guess, softening every blow before it lands. But when you speak with finality, you slice through hesitation like a blade through flesh. A phrase such as, "Here's what happens next," or "That's not the issue, this is," becomes more than words. It becomes a decree. It leaves no room for debate, no air for opposition to breathe. The genius is not in the syllables themselves, it is in the authority, the unshakable conviction with which they are delivered. Understand this. Human beings are trained from birth to obey decisive language. They live in a world of uncertainty, second-guessing, doubting, waiting for someone to define the path. The one who speaks in absolutes without apology or hesitation becomes the gravitational center of the room. He defines the ground others must walk on. He becomes the unspoken reference point everyone orbits, often without realizing it. The moment you release such a line, you seize the frame of reality itself. The conversation is no longer a battlefield of opinions. It is your constructed arena. And others, even if they resist consciously, unconsciously yield to it. This is why the weak defend themselves endlessly. They explain, they justify, they try to prove. In doing so, they leave countless escape routes for their opponent. But the strong do the opposite. They make statements that close all exits. They corner reality itself, leaving no path except the one they have drawn. That is how you control a conversation instantly, not by speaking more, but by anchoring the entire dialogue to your sentence. From that point forward, everything bends, folds, and revolves around you. But beware, the common trap is to believe that this power lies only in the words. It does not. The words are merely the visible blade, the sharp edge gleaming under the light. But the true weapon, the hidden arsenal, lies in the hand that wields it, your delivery. Words without authority are air, forgotten the moment they fade. Delivery is the iron that forges them into something unshakable. Speak too quickly, and your mask slips. You reveal insecurity, that subtle desperation to be heard, to be acknowledged, to not lose the moment. Speak too softly, and you invite dismissal. Your sentence, no matter how precise, will sound like a request rather than a command. The weak cannot bear silence. The ordinary person collapses under its weight. When a pause appears, they panic. They rush to fill it with rambling explanations, nervous laughter, or redundant words, and in their scrambling they expose themselves completely. Silence becomes a trap that devours them. You, however, must reverse this weakness. Silence must become your accomplice. You do not fear it, you weaponize it. After delivering your decisive sentence, stop. Do not explain. Do not soften. Do not rush to fill the air. Let the silence sharpen the edge of your words like a whetstone sharpening steel. In that stillness, tension thickens. Most will feel the unbearable pull to respond, to justify, to argue, to yield. They cannot tolerate the vacuum, so they surrender themselves by filling it. This is how you turn their psychology against them. You force them to reveal their inner neediness, their hunger for validation, their inability to withstand pressure. Mastering this interplay between decisive speech and calculated silence is the rhythm of domination. It is the drumbeat to which all others must dance. You speak, you pause, you let them squirm, and then you strike again. Every conversation becomes a performance you owe. Registrate, and make no mistake. In every dialogue, the one who sets the tempo controls the outcome. This is the unspoken law of influence. Words may pierce, but silence enslaves. Never forget this law, for those who do are condemned to be puppets, dancing to another's rhythm while believing themselves free. Let us now make this tactical, because theory without practice is dead weight. Picture the familiar battlefield of a workplace meeting. A rival colleague, emboldened by the presence of others, dares to challenge your authority, attempting to undermine your proposal in front of the group. The average professional makes the same mistake every time. They scramble to defend, to explain, to justify endlessly. With every extra word, they bleed authority. Their voice may grow louder, their arguments more elaborate, but their credibility erodes with every syllable, because the more they talk, the more they reveal a need to be believed. They expose themselves as someone fighting for approval instead of commanding it. You will not fall into this trap. When the challenge comes, you do not debate, you do not plead, you do not clutter the air with explanations. You strike with precision. One line, delivered coldly, decisively. That's irrelevant. The real issue is this. Then silence. The room tilts. All eyes shift. The challenger, stripped of momentum, is left scrambling to react. But it is already too late. The frame has been reset. The battlefield no longer belongs to them. It belongs to you. The subject, the context, the entire flow of discussion is now anchored to your directive. Now consider a different arena, your personal life. An argument erupts, emotions flare, and your opponent expects you to take the bait, to shout, to defend, to descend into the chaos. But you do not. You hold your ground. Instead of matching fire with fire, you deliver one cold, cutting line. We're not talking about that, we're talking about what matters. Then silence again. No raised voice. No defensive explanation. The energy collapses. Your opponent, deprived of the emotional chaos they sought to feed on, finds themselves stranded, forced onto your ground, compelled to argue within the frame you have set. Understand this clearly. These are not conversational tricks. They are structural shifts in power. They transform you from just another participant, reacting, defending, competing, into the architect of the entire exchange. And once you build the frame, there is no escape. Everyone else becomes trapped inside it, forced to operate under the rules you designed, whether they realize it or not. That is the essence of conversational control. Not noise, not volume, but architecture. If this strategy resonates with you, if you feel the sharp edge of this power cutting through the fog of ordinary conversation, then you already know why you cannot afford to miss what comes next. This is Curiosity to Wisdom, where we expose the hidden levers of influence and arm you with tactics the weak will never comprehend. So pause for a moment. Subscribe now and commit to never walking into a dialogue unarmed again. Because what you're learning here is not mere conversation. It is conversational warfare. The ideological anchor of this principle does not rest on opinion, but on the weight of philosophy and centuries of ruthless observation. Both Stoicism and Machiavellian psychology converge on the same truth, that the one who controls his words controls his world. Marcus Aurelius himself observed that the more a man feels compelled to explain himself, the less power he truly holds. Explanation, to the Stoic mind, is surrender, an admission that another's perception matters more than your own certainty. Machiavelli, in his cold precision, warned that authority is not secured through persuasion, through sweetened words or appeals to reason, but by framing reality itself so that others unconsciously walk the path you have drawn. Those who frame rule, those who explain serve. Understand this without hesitation. Power does not flow to the loudest voice in the room. Noise is cheap, and the weak confuse sound for strength. Power flows to the one who projects certainty, and certainty, true, unwavering certainty, is intoxicating. Human beings plagued by doubt and indecision gravitate to the figure who does not waver. When you deliver a single decisive sentence, spoken as if no other possibility exists, you become a lighthouse in the fog of uncertainty. Others, even those who may outwardly resist, instinctively seek stability in your authority. They crave the anchor you provide, and in craving it, they yield to you. This is how emperors ruled their courts, not by endless speeches, but by the weight of pronouncement. This is how generals commanded their armies, not by pleading, but by defining the terms of action as indisputable law. This is how leaders silenced dissent, not by shouting down opposition, but by creating a frame in which opposition itself became meaningless. They did not outtalk, they outframed, and you must learn the same. Do not be deceived by the illusion of mode. Vanity. The world may dress itself in technology, in corporate suits, in polite language, but the mechanics remain unchanged. In the office, in negotiation, in love, and in conflict, the one who defines the frame controls the outcome. He who hesitates, defends, or floods the air with endless words loses before the battle begins. This is the eternal law of influence, written not in ink, but in the silence that follows decisive speech. Now, let us sharpen the tactics further, because power without structure dissolves into chaos. There are 3 core moves, 3 weapons that you must ingrain into your psychology until they become instinct. The redirection, the closure, and the reframe. These are not casual phrases. They are not communication tools or polite strategies for smoother dialogue. They are weapons of conversational war, forged to interrupt, destabilize, and reset the balance of power instantly. If you master these, you will never again find yourself trapped in someone else's narrative. You will be the one constructing the walls, deciding the terms, dictating the very ground on which others are forced to stand. The first weapon is the redirection. When chaos arises, when the noise of arguments, objections, or irrelevant details threatens to swallow control, you cut through it with a single line that pivots the entire room. That's not important. This is. In that moment, you silence the storm. You deny oxygen to distractions. You show everyone present that only you decide what deserves attention. The room bends around your words, and all others are forced to adjust. The second weapon is the closure. This is the strike that ends battles others would prolong. Weak men are addicted to arguing, to dragging conflict endlessly in a desperate bid to win by persistence. You sever this with one final cut. We're done with this. Here's what's next. No further debate, no explanations, no defensive scrambling. You deliver the line, and the conversation is over. Finality is terrifying to those who thrive on chaos. Closure is the sound of a door slamming shut, and it leaves them powerless. The third weapon is the reframe. This is the move that turns insult into fuel, disrespect into dominance. When someone seeks to provoke, to manipulate, or to undermine, you flip the narrative in one decisive sentence. Why? Or looking at this the wrong way, let me show you the truth. The aggressor's attack is neutralized, and worse, they are forced to operate inside your narrative. Their energy is redirected against them, their hostility folded into your authority. Understand this. Every conflict, every negotiation, every dialogue is nothing more than a clash of frames. The strong build them, the weak live inside them. Once you wield these 3 weapons with precision, you will no longer participate in conversations. You will own them. Understand, too, that these tactics are not confined to the polished halls of business meetings or the grand stage of negotiations. They extend far beyond formal settings. They are weapons to be carried into the battlefield of everyday life. You are surrounded by subtle manipulators, emotional parasites, and opportunists who feed on your compliance. Every day, whether in casual exchanges, personal relationships, or mundane transactions, the war for control plays out. And every day, most people surrender without even realizing it. They apologize too quickly, they explain too much, they argue too loudly. In doing so, they hand their power away for free. You, however, must operate differently. Take the case of a manipulative friend, the kind who pushes guilt into your hands like a poisoned gift. They imply that you owe them, that you must bend, that you are responsible for their burdens. The weak would defend themselves, explaining why they cannot comply, digging deeper into a trap of endless justification. You do not. You deliver one cold, surgical line. That's not my responsibility. Then silence. No tone of apology, no elaboration, just the blade dropped on the table. In that moment, their grip shatters, because guilt only thrives when it is fed by explanations. Deny it, and it starves. Or consider a pushy salesperson drowning you in chatter, piling on urgency, overwhelming you with false choices designed to break down your resistance. The average buyer folds, overtalks, or gives excuses. You instead shift the ground with one sentence. Here's what I'm willing to do. Instantly, the frame tilts. You define the terms. You decide what matters. Their tactics collapse because they depend on dragging you into their frame of pressure, but you refuse entry. Even in moments of blatant disrespect, where emotions run hot and most would explode, you remain the unmoving center. You do not rage. You do not defend. You deliver one cutting line. That's not how this works. And then you stop. Silence. The aggressor stumbles because their fire has no oxygen. Their attack dies on the battlefield you refuse to step onto. This is the art of control, to outsmart without rage, to defend without apology, to win without raising your voice. Remember this eternal truth. Domination is not always loud. In fact, the most terrifying form of dominance is often terrifyingly quiet. The transformation you undergo by mastering this principle is nothing short of profound. Most people bleed away their strength not because they lack intelligence or ambition, but because they are enslaved by the compulsion to explain, to justify, to endlessly defend themselves. Each extra word they speak is a confession of weakness, a desperate plea for validation, an unconscious admission that the power lies with the other person. This is why they are so easily baited into arguments that lead nowhere, debates that strip their authority, and emotional traps designed to drain their will. But when you master the discipline of the single sentence, when you anchor yourself in the law of decisive framing, all of this ends. You no longer waste power. You no longer surrender ground. You become something rarer, something dangerous, an unmoving center. The unmoving center does not chase approval. It does not collapse beneath pressure. It does not allow louder voices to dictate the rhythm of the room. Instead, it radiates authority without effort. Those around you may not consciously understand what has changed, but they will feel it in their bones. In meetings, they will pause before speaking against you. In arguments, they will soften their tone. In personal exchanges, they will defer to your frame even when they cannot articulate why. It is because human beings, at their core, crave certainty. And when they encounter someone who carries certainty as naturally as breath, they yield to it. They orbit it as planets orbit the sun. This is the aura you begin to carry, inevitability. Your words do not feel like opinions to others. They feel like conclusions. Your directives do not seem like suggestions. They feel like outcomes already decided. That is why single-sentence mastery is not a trick of rhetoric. It is a law of psychological warfare. Whoever defines the frame commands perception itself. And perception is not separate from reality in human affairs. It is reality. If they see you as the one who decides what matters, then you are the one who decides. If they feel you are immovable, then you become immovable. Control the frame, and you control the world inside it. That is the final transformation, the silent shift from participant to master. So here is your final command. Abandon the childish need to be understood. Reject the urge to defend, to explain, to argue endlessly. That is weakness dressed as dialogue. From this moment forward, you speak less, but you speak with the weight of certainty. You deliver one sentence, razor sharp, undeniable, final, and then you hold the silence, letting others drown in their need to fill it. This is how you control not only conversations but perceptions, relationships, and ultimately, your destiny. Never ramble, never explain, declare, frame, and command. That is the sentence that wins every conversation.